of this. Not infrequently I will use a term about upping the stakes. Normally I'll be talking about something that may go on in life, things that people may attempt to do, things that people may believe or think about that they want to do, and then oftentimes I will use the term about upping the stakes in reference to somebody attempting to do this kind of activity, and how you've got to take even those things that might appear to be not much out of the ordinary and do the same thing, but in some way, quote, up the stakes. I want to point out something. Many of you, both here and some of the other places getting this, 1989, you have already traveled to this place, but there's been no map for it. There's been no names of the locales, and so some of you may find this interesting, and the rest of you should find it very interesting, because you haven't been there. It is this. Even if you do not intend, even if you are giving no thought to whatever it is I may mean by upping the stakes, if you seriously attempt to change, or if you seriously attempt to think about change in any way related to your involvement in this, the stakes are upped. You've got no choice. That is why failure, even just some success, when you attempt to change in regard to your involvement with this, is so goddamn distasteful, almost disorienting, as some of you have been through. And it apparently, I guess you would have expected, was not that out of the ordinary when you started. That you had attempted to do things before. Long before you met me, you attempted to quit smoking, quit drinking, get more exercise, be friendlier, whatever. And you may have found, since you've been involved with this, that some of the things that you had thought about changing may not be absolutely new, that you may now have, in a sense, reconsidered some of the things that you had thought about before, and now believe that the time is absolutely right, if not the time has become imperative to make such a change. In other words, you apparently are not undertaking anything that unusual, something that you had played around with before. And now you thought, well, the time is right, I can do it, or now I must try to do it. And then when you did not do it, well, I'll have to use technical biological terms. It is really yucky. You know, that something is extraordinarily, unexpectedly rancid, odious, egregious. And now I've just told you why. Because failure, even failure under the guise of ordinary success, which we all know by now is SS, some success, but failure is quite acceptable in the city. Failure is very acceptable in the history of man. History itself is replete with failures. It's just no longer called that. People who lost, look at Napoleon, just happened to come to mind. Famous for being a failure. When you have attempted to change, when you are even seriously thinking about attempting to change, and it is in some way connected with this, not with me, not with some idea that or map that I've given out to you, but you must know what I'm referring to now. There's no good, valid verbal description of this, but it's now you attempt to make some change. And since I pointed out to you, you should be able to understand that it is absolutely inseparable to your involvement with this, even though it might have been something that you thought you should have done years before you got involved with me. And yet now, you see that it is absolutely inseparable. Your thinking about it, or even your attempt, is now inseparable. The way in which you would go about it now would not have occurred, would not be extant, were it not for your involvement with this. And that's what it amounts to. Then, when you do not succeed, it is extraordinarily distasteful. That is one of the reasons I can verbalize that I have never and will never try and involve any of you in any directions from me of rather random, fairly vague encouragements So let's get out there and change. If you're really involved with this, by God, you people should be doing things. Each and every one of you should lose 10 pounds. Each and every one of you should quit smoking. Those of you who don't smoke, take it up. Besides the humor, you would notice that ordinarily, in all forms of religion and self-help, everything, they can't help it. Even as far as to go back to our bird-watching society, our library appreciation society, any group that bands together, leadership is going to survive. Leadership will rise forth, somebody will take over, and very soon, even though it may appear to have been fairly well removed from individual personal affairs such as a bird-watching society, this kind of attitude will begin to flow through this little organism, this collection of cells, that's now a little club. And it will come out as encouraging the people, such as the bird watchers. It's after they've been there a while, it'll sort of come out if the president, whoever seems to be the ruling power in this club, if he or she does not state it outright, it will be understood that the leadership of the club, the organic, the developing attitude of the club members themselves are such that we should all spend more time, blah, blah, blah. More time watching birds. More time thinking about watching birds. Spend more time reading the brand new books on bird watching. It will be this encouragement that we should be making some new additional effort vis-a-vis our involvement in this new organism. They call it an organization probably. But we should be making new efforts. But it can be pretty vague. It's just like, come on gang, let's do better. And of course, do better denotes some kind of change. But that kind of vague change, although it is mother's milk back in the city, here, very unprofitable. Just telling people, come on, do better. Sort of the other side of that in the three-dimensional world, you should see it. It's very common in religions, families, all sorts of organizations. Rather than, come on, let's do better, is the general attitude of, well, Jesus, you people, I don't know how you could do worse. Which is a form of random, pretty vague. It's not encouragement. You could look at it as hectoring to the point of do better, change. When the stakes have been upped, and you're now, by your own feel, seriously involved with this, and you try to make some change, you're playing around with something that should not be taken lightly. It's why you should not let your own temporary or even apparent rulers in you say, all right, we're going to do so-and-so. Unless you are prepared to do it, unless you've been listening to some of the things I have been skipping around about this for the last 2 weeks, unless you're prepared to do it, you should not even entertain it. You should take it as an anachronistic idea, an idea whose time has not come, insofar as I'm concerned. Do not listen seriously to the noise that says, all right, let's do so-and-so. I know what he's talking about. It comes over me, I know I should do so-and-so, and by God, I'm going to give it a good try. Friends, fuck a good try, as our great leader would say. No, I keep forgetting we don't have a great leader. If we had one, that's what he would say. Trust me. Because the stakes at the table are raised, and they're done in a manner that is foreign to the city. It's done in a manner, until now I've pointed out, that none of you are prepared for. But all of you, many of you, have paid a small price. Many of you have been disquieted, discomforted, upset in various undertakings you've tried, whether without my awareness. And it was based upon, that is, the end result is based upon what I'm describing to you now, is you should not lightly say, well, I will do so-and-so. A revolutionist shouldn't say anything lightly. Of course, you know that doesn't have anything to do with outside. From outside observers, I guess you should look like Emmett Kelly III. But internally, don't say things like, don't listen to such things, even if you say them of, well, why not? All right, I'll get up, all right, 15, all right, 20, all right, 30 minutes. I get 30 minutes more or less early, starting, what's the date, Monday? All right. Okay, Tuesday. Well, all right. At least by Wednesday. At least by Wednesday. All right, today's Monday or Tuesday. All right. At least by Wednesday, I'll start getting up. What'd I say? Yeah, 30 minutes early, and I'll. All right. I'll run. I'll run 30 more minutes than I have been running. All right. That's it. That little shady drama I just pulled. You do understand I'm trying to infer is the kind of thing, what I was trying to indicate. That very likely you are not going to get up first thing Wednesday, or get up 30 minutes early Wednesday, as though your life depended on it. Am I correct? Yes, I am. That is the sort of thing that you should no longer entertain. You should not tolerate that in you. Now, if for the time being that would apparently put a temporary cessation to your attempts and your dreams of changing, then I am telling you quite directly, so be it. But you should not be, in any way that you can become aware of, you should not become a willing, knowing participant in something that may result in absolute failure, or at the very least some success, or at the very most some success, because that's not good enough. It's not good enough, and I don't care what it is. There's no habit that anybody has. There's no personality trait that any of you have. There's no apparent weakness that any of you have that a human cannot reverse. Now, it's not necessary in the city that everyone who thinks that they should stop some hobby or undertake some new activity can do it. But surely now all of you people know, if any of you had some great habit, or if you were on cocaine and thought, well, the cocaine train will drag everybody down. It's known now to be the most addictive thing in the world. All right, will you trust me that there's somebody in the world somewhere that was as addicted to cocaine as anybody could be in one day, for whatever reason. We're talking about an ordinary person in the city, just a regular old Joe shithead, and one day he got up and went, no more, and stopped. All right? At least one person. All right. If one person can do it, you can do it. The point is, there is no great exception. There is no one area or any areas that are particularly hard. That, well, I could stop all kinds of stuff, but I can't stop this habit. I've tried before. There is no strange, there's no extraordinary habit, personality trait, weakness, phobia, nothing. It only appears so in the city. But if you are not prepared, if you do not have your own awareness of that by now, do not entertain some voice in you that says, all right, let's do so and so tomorrow. Why don't we do that? Isn't it about time that we shaped up? And you went, yeah, I guess so. No, isn't it? Come on. Yeah, okay. If you do not know for a fact, if you cannot tell yourself and know it, that, all right, I'm going to do that, or I'm going to die, how much stronger can I make it? Of course, the revolutionist is, I'm simply going to do that. If you are not prepared for that, for the time being, do not even entertain it. Don't even say, well, I'll try. Maybe I can slip up on it. You can't slip up on it. Now, maybe I'll sort of stumble into it. Maybe if I think about it long enough, in some way it will begin to feed into my subconscious. It will become my own subliminal messages to me. I wish Harry James was alive to play at your funeral. Hell, maybe he is, but anyway. Another little piece of this, let me describe it a different way. Rather than you people, any of you individually, rather than just drifting along with this and getting even internally entangled with your own discussions as to the possibilities that you might ever really taste, that you might really experience, whatever I mean by new intelligence, that you might actually become a revolutionist. Those kinds of internal dialogues, rather than being involved with that. Anybody that still has any doubt, and even those of you who don't, you can still use this, is periodically you should turn to yourself and just ask quite directly, do I actually need a new intelligence? Do I personally actually need it? Is what I really need. Do I need medical, psychiatric, spiritual help? Is that what I need? Or perhaps it's even on a, relatively speaking, a more simplistic level. Is it what I need? Do I need more attention, just from ordinary people? Do I need the appearance of more success? Do I need to have more money? Do I need more and better sex? Do I need things that people get in the city, and I just need an increase in the quality, perhaps even just an increase in the quantity of it? Would that do me? The problem is, as you might see, is how many of you not only could answer such a question or even ponder it and consider it, but how many of you can actually ask it? Now, you can say, well, I heard you do it, so I can ask it. That's like wanting to change. I just told you don't do things unless you can really do it. Can you really ask yourself, do I actually need a new intelligence? Do I personally need it? How did I end up in this place? How much of me continuing this is habit, routine? Do I actually need whatever the hell new intelligence is? Do I need it? Everybody apparently needs something. But can you ask yourself, is what I really need, do I need a psychiatrist? Do I need a reformed rabbi or a refried priest? Do I need something resembling what used to be laughingly known as spiritual help? Or do I perhaps just need some medical attention? Do I just perhaps need some attention? Do I need somebody or some bodies to stroke and pet me, smile at me? Think about it a second. We got a second. You mean to tell me there's nothing in the city, nothing in ordinary life that if I, let us say, if I could increase the quality or the quantity in some area, all the way from money to sex, anything that's going on in the city, are you going to tell me that there's nothing, if I could increase the quality or the quantity of it available to you, that if I could do such, that you'd drop out of this? You'd become too busy, too blah, blah, blah. You just couldn't show up here anymore. Are you going to tell me that's not true? Anybody? That suddenly you got an income, oh, let's be reasonable, $500,000 an hour coming in. All right. 23 hours a day. Give yourself an hour off. Look at the time you just have to spend sort of keeping track of it. Could you come around here anymore? Whatever your dream is, anything you can think of in the city, are you going to tell me that it's not possible that things, if they could arrange themselves, just happened to other people? Suddenly you were so famous from your music, your writing, you've been working on a book. If you'd apparently got no talent, just suddenly the world recognized that you should be like, what's that phony baloney talent show on TV? Like you got no talent, but you're suddenly, life decided you should be the spokesman for the world, the spokesperson. That you're just suddenly famous for being famous, just for being you. If you were that kind, if you were experiencing, I almost said suffering, experiencing that kind of fame, to where your name was just on everyone's lips, and people were just screaming, "Where are you? Where are you?" And just all you had to do was walk out almost in any city, out on any street in any city, and people will rush up. And they're calling your name and throwing you kisses. Now that kind of busy life, and of course people owe a debt to the public. Are you going to tell me that you would have time to come around here anymore? Come on. Who could get rich and famous and it wouldn't change their involvement with this? Anybody? Can you even ask yourself? I can ask you. The danger is me ask it, and you notice I kept out, whether you notice or not. By and large, I intended any great inflection with that, such as making it sound as though it were an attack. But your own nervous system hears it as some sort of attack. Well, that's a challenge, at least, if not an attack, to see if somebody is really serious for us to try and imagine, well, if I did get rich and famous, I'm not saying I'd drop out, but hell, I'd have to take a little time out. So you can't even ask yourself clinically. That is, remember in the city what they think of as objectively. You can't even ask yourself that because the answer is already known. And that's why you can't ask yourself. That's why nobody can be objective about areas of asking questions in the city, because the answer is already known. So how are you going to be objective? Like, well, I'll ask myself this question, and it's not weighted. I'm going to ask myself, and I'm going to consider and weigh all the alternatives, and I'll be absolutely fair, non-prejudicial. It's impossible. That's why people worry about, am I being fair, impartial, non-prejudicial? No, no, no. They never ask, can I be? Because the answer is no, no, no. But there wouldn't be a question. If the answer wasn't already established, there'd be no question. It's sort of dirty. And of course, if I were truly a decent sort, I don't guess I would ever bring it up. Much less to end this paragraph and say, all of you should periodically ask yourself that. Do I actually need this? Some future payoff, additional payoffs of whatever it seems to be, magnified of whatever I've gotten out of it yet. Do I actually need this? Or are there not things in the city, a thing or things in the city, that if I were privy to, if I were a part of, would keep me out of here? I just couldn't come back. I'd just be too busy, that's it. No offense, but I would simply be too busy. That is, whatever it was I thought I needed, it wasn't this. It seemed all right as far as it went until I suddenly struck gold. Now, I meant to come back, but I had to take out some time. I went to my public. I had to take care of my financial affairs. And I don't know. I got carried away and kind of lost interest. I just couldn't get back into it. Wouldn't you admit that I presented it fairly coldly and clinically? Except your own nervous system still heard it as, if not an attack, a challenge. Like you're saying there's only a few people, or maybe nobody. I didn't say nobody, but now that I said it, all right. Of course there's nobody in the world that could withstand that. I don't mean there's not. I'm saying as far as you know. Can you withstand it? If not, which I'm not attacking you yet. But if you could not withstand it, then what does that say about this? And that is not necessarily, from a more complex view, is not necessarily a pejorative attitude toward it. But if you were big boys and girls, you could face up to what degree your involvement here seems to have any lasting validity, if there's any real need, if it just seems to be something I kind of stumbled into and it's by and large sort of interesting. And I got to admit, I have learned things and I've had experiences I don't guess I'd have ever had, but would not fame and fortune, if not medical treatment, or cheap psychiatrist, or a rabbi with nose and glasses, and isn't there something in the city that could just absolutely wipe this out? Well, if we're going to be real dirty, I'll end it with a real dirty one. How about this? And some of this is right in a few of you people, it's right in your guts. On top of what I just presented, how many of you now can realize that at your old level of consciousness, it would seem to you, now that I pointed out, that it would seem to you that having gotten involved with this, in a real sense, has drained some of the energy out of your pursuit of city dreams. That you had an active interest in being rich and famous and whatever back in the city, And it's like things weren't going all that well. You weren't actually looking for an escape. You weren't looking for a cheap form of analysis, but you kind of stumbled into this, and life was sort of at a lull with you. You weren't getting anywhere in your profession, your career. You weren't getting any richer, any faster. And so you sort of got into this, and it was la-di-da. Let me tell you what la-di-da in some of the instances are. La-di-da is your intelligence wants to take this as an excuse for failure. Well, now I'm onto something now. It would have been nice to be famous. It would have been nice to be rich. But boy, I was facing an uphill battle. It's not all that easy in ordinary life. And now getting involved with this, I begin to see the futility of that kind of thing. Right. That some of you now has part of your intelligence that believes it's newer, a little more insightful. It says, well, nothing really objectively do I have to say negative about being rich or being famous and well known, but it's not the same as this. And I begin to understand that that's all pretty fleeting, and it's just a whole bunch of clowns there in the city hollering at each other, and everybody's famous for a little while, and you take turns on stage. It's not probably as great as I thought it was. Now back to my question. If you suddenly got real rich, or you were suddenly recognized for being the jewel in the rough that you are, even though you can now say that this means more to me than that kind of dreams I used to have, you're going to tell me that you are absolutely immune to that now, that in some way you are so insightful that if now they rushed up and said, a whole bunch of people, a city sends out a contingency, and they run up to you and say, for years we know that you were trying to get our attention and be famous and playing the music, and I know we didn't give you a good shot. We realize our error now. Please come back, and we got a whole lot of money, and we got all the fame, all the women, just sex, everything you could want. And you say, well, I've sort of seen through some of that. And they say, come on, you wouldn't believe what we got in store. You say, you sure you got the right guy? Yes, you! We've all regretted losing the chance we had. I'm seriously going to, just momentarily right now, stop this dirtiness, but consider that. Consider that those of you that still want to whine and wring your hands to me and to yourself about, well, I keep thinking I'm getting close. I keep thinking I'm about to get up to velocity speed and get outside of the gravity of ordinary life. And I'm beginning to perhaps have the possibility of thinking and feeling in ways all the time or more of the time that I used to just some of the time when I started this. I just feel like I'm about to push on. On what basis? What kind of energy is fueling you? What kind of actual need? To ask yourself, do I actually need this? Whatever the hell it is. Do I actually need it? Or is there something else that if I had it, I'm afraid would take me out of this, at least temporarily? I'd have to look after my other affairs. And of course the insinuation being the other affairs would become all of your affairs. Well, just a little something else I made up to get your Mondays off to a good start and refresh everybody. Well, let's get away from things that apparently has too much bearing, at least even possibly, on people individually. You know, I'm with you. Fuck all that shit. Let me see if I can't go into one of mine about... We done economics lately? I got one about brokers, but I've been wanting to save it. I don't know why. Well, let's see. Instead of economics, I got another one for you. I don't know what area this is. I guess it's just good old human areas. It is the three levels of insults. I didn't know what else to call it because, by God, that's what it is. And it's this. At least my three levels. Of course, you may run across some competing idea of their own three levels. If you do, let me know. I'd like to know First level, here's the cry in the city having to do with insults. It's, hey, don't insult me. Am I right? In fact, in the city, that's all three levels. That's it. It's, don't insult me. Variation of, don't you know what kind of guy I am? Don't insult me. If it was possible in the city to become a little more complex, maybe I could call it a would-be revolutionist here and there. Somebody who seems to have smelled something in the air at one time. But this does not ordinarily occur with old intelligence. But here, I want to give us a graduation. The next level would be, remember, this doesn't happen. I want to slip you up on something. If somebody was just a little more complex, if they were really a fripp somewhere, the next level would be this. It's, hey, don't insult life. Think about that. It takes somebody with a more complex intelligence, that they're no longer simply worried about me, which is fine in the city. Everybody's supposed to be worried about moi. But the person, even if they were being a little more philosophical when they said don't insult me, if they were trying to be a little more philosophical in the common connotation of that sense, they would still be involved with individuals, not just me as a person, but individuals should not be going around in life being insulting to one another. But that's still just a plain old, I'm staying in line to die, what's new with you dynamic. But if they could get just a little more complex, somebody here and there would go, well, all that's fine. That's the kind of thing that goes on with people. But if anybody had any real intelligence, if somebody was really wise, I bet they'd be more interested, they'd be saying, don't insult life. Then if we had such a person and they thought in such ways, they might even have this kind of insight that, hey, that's the very kind of things that religions and myths have talked about for years, that they attribute to gods, and don't be blasphemous, love your fellow man, not just individually, but love humanity. That, hey, in a sense, that's what it would be, is don't insult life. That if you pick on somebody because of their, we'll go to common examples, because of their color, because of their religion, because of their sex, because of their economic position, apparently. If you pick on somebody for that reason, God, are you being provincial, unsophisticated, simplistic, probably dangerous, certainly not, up-to-date, humane, and it's almost an insult to life. Because who died and left you in charge of deciding who deserves to be treated nicely and who is deserving of insults and crass treatment? Just because somebody is poor, just because somebody is in a minority race or religion in your community, is that any reason to be nasty to them? Less than genteel, considerate. To do so, you're not just insulting an individual, you are, how'd you put it? You're insulting life. Yes. Don't insult life. All right? See, I'm dancing to get you up somewhere else. Because the middle stages, when I make up three things, the middle stage is always kind of... Look at the second act of an opera, the second movement of a symphony. The Beethovens and the Verdis didn't know what they were doing, but it's always right there in the middle is kind of the do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And you keep patting your foot waiting, yeah, we'll get back to the good stuff. Get to the climax, you know, where the fat woman runs out on an elephant or somebody... All right. Now let's get to what would be the real revolutionist understanding and attitude of the possible levels of insult. What would the third one be? For a real revolutionist, if he had to verbalize it through his own actions, which includes thinking of actions, the third level would be this. is don't cause life to insult itself. Which on the surface, I guess, sounds to city people as pretty egocentric. So you understand, a revolutionist should not knowingly be playing any part that would contribute to life insulting itself. That's one of my forced rewrites. That's the first one that hits me. That's the way I like it, but I want you to understand the possible extensions of it. If you understand it, that covers it, and I don't have to go through the thing about contributing some small part. All right, so I did that. Now forget that. Back to this. The revolutionary level is don't do anything that would cause life to insult itself. Ordinary intelligence cannot do that. And I'm not even going to tell you that any of you or any of us individually can actually do it. But you can be aware of the possibility that you could do it, and that's the kind of behavior from which one must refrain. Because the first two levels I'd already talked about, a real revolutionist would be far beyond anyway. Not because of his great spiritual development and his humane love for his fellow man. It would simply be that a revolutionist had got no interest. That is not a form of profitable energy exchange for anyone with any intelligence to be involved in insulting other people. Remember the first level of people hollering, "Hey, don't insult me." You are dressed in a strange costume at the time if you believe that you are involved with activities such as this, and somebody, a fairly middle-class, sane, bourgeois person in the city, responds to you and says, "Hey, don't insult me." In other words, there was some basis for them believing they had received an insult. Then you are off on a serious backward journey. Was that convoluted enough? A real revolutionist would simply not be operating in a way that another sane person, an ordinary person, would believe that they'd been insulted. Because to be insulted is a form of criticism. And if you are still criticizing ordinary people, Jesus Christ, give me a break. Then you don't have to ponder the question I opened up tonight about, do you actually need this? The answer is no. Well, we couldn't hold you down and shove it in you in some opening. You don't need it. So, the first level of insult is not the revolutionist problem. The second level of don't insult life is simply an extension. It eats up the first one. The revolutionist already knows that to insult an individual, you're insulting life. Ordinary people believe they insult one another on an individual level because you're responsible for what you do. The revolutionists would already see more that we're not worried about you. This is the way life operates. So what are you going to do? Insult life. How dare you, out of all these people, make somebody, this one person, and put him behind the counter here at the DMV or at the Social Security office, this one person, and you picked him out to be the bane of my existence here for 20 minutes or an hour and 20 minutes here on a Monday, January the 23rd. Why did you do that to me? We got to turn the tape over. Remember your place. So it would only be at the third area, the third level, that real revolutionists would even, the real revolutionist would even be involved with any willful, conscious notice of what he was doing. Because the first two levels he simply wouldn't be doing, he wouldn't be a revolutionist. But now it gets into the area of a potential that is singular to somebody involved with this. Again, I do not want to make this too convoluted. Ordinary people in the city, I'll give you a quick parallel. All religions believe there's some form of absolute, irreversible, inexcusable blasphemy to the gods, to the cosmic powers, that there is something that a person can do. Right? Catholic Church, whatever it is, hold a black mass, desecrate an altar, put a crucifix upside down. I don't guess you can put a Star of David upside down. So they're safe. But there is the belief in all religions that there is something, that the adherent or would-be adherent can do that is just, hey, you went too far, forget it. God will never get over that. A real insult is what I'm telling you, and it's not possible. It would take somebody extraordinary to, if there was such a thing as blasphemy, to actually do it. But what I'm telling you now, when I said that I wasn't even guaranteeing that you could actually insult or cause life to insult itself, you can reach the point to realize that it is possible that if life could be made to encourage to insult itself, me about to do what I was going to do would certainly be in line with that kind of potential. That I don't know whether it's possible, you might feel. I don't know whether that life can actually insult itself. But if it can, and it suddenly went, hey, why am I doing this? And it looked around. If all this scenario could happen, it looked around. What I'm about to do would be one of the things it'd look around and go, well, for one thing, it's that kind of shit. And it'd look right at me. I know that. That is the sort of thing that you cannot do. It gets to be awfully close to at least the possibility of what blasphemy would be. But that's got so many religious and out-of-date connotations. I like to get more specific and technical and just call it a damn insult. To make life insult itself. Now still, if that sounds too obtuse, we can always ask ourselves this, can't we? Yes, we can. All right, then let's go on to the next subject. All right, I'll tell you. If that does not sound possible, you can always take it back at this level. If it's possible at another level, it's possible in you. The question is this: is it possible for you to make you insult you? Oh, all right, I'll tell you. Well, I'll tell you one way that comes to mind for some reason. One way is to say, and to hear yourself say, well, I'm going to do so-and-so, I'm going to change so-and-so, and then you don't fucking do it. That is causing you to insult yourself. That is why it is so distasteful. That is why it is so extraordinarily odious, because you have, in a sense, made you, caused you, contributed to you insulting yourself. Nobody else. Nobody had any part of it, as far as you can tell. Nobody made you decide, all right, I'm going to stop doing so-and-so, I'm going to get in the morning and do so-and-so. Apparently, somebody may have triggered it. You was watching some TV show, and some guy said, boy, I feel so much better since I did so-and-so. And you go, oh, all right. But if you don't do it, what are you going to do? Get up in the morning and curse Phil Donahue or Oprah Winfrey or somebody? Well, they shouldn't have had people like that on there and upset me. You got nowhere to look. You have caused yourself to insult yourself. And it is not a pretty feeling. It is not conducive to anything that is profitable to somebody involved with this. There is in the same way a contributing factor to life insulting itself, at least the possibility, every time somebody who has any knowledge about anything extraordinary goes against it. That every time that you might be causing you to insult you, you're running the possibility, you're contributing to the possibility of life being able to insult itself. And that's not a pretty sight. Oh, all right. If it's still too oblique, how about this? Every serious religious commandment from any religion anywhere, let me take it down to the goddamn gutter level, to the mud, every one of those things, to varying little degrees, was running the possibility of humans being involved with nervous system energy exchanges that verged on being unprofitable, which is an insult. And it comes out, of course, having to talk to humans, it comes out in words, in the words apparently have a life of their own, of you should not hate your neighbor. I know what that means. Yes, I do. I can describe it. I could talk about it. There is, as always, an electrical, chemical, molecular reality behind that of a kind of negative, unprofitable energy exchange going on. It is an insult to life. I'm going to leave this, but I can't resist giving you one. It's not hand grenade, firecracker I'll throw back before we run away from it. If what I just said had validity and it stopped at the 3D world, at the 3D level, and it didn't go around the corner, if that had validity, then there should be an intelligence within some of you somewhere that would ask this. All right, if that's true, what he just said, then why is it that no one can apparently live by the dictates of any given religion? Or they can mix them up and take one from column A and one from column B and make up their own religion. One from the 10 Commandments, one from the 7 Commandments, which was a cheap version that not many people's heard of. 2 from Buddha's baskets. 1 or 2 things from the Quran. How come somebody can't just pick out their own and put it together and live by it? Because if you're saying that every time you transgress the religious commandments throughout history and throughout the world, that you are contributing to the possibility of life insulting itself, then why hadn't life stopped people from doing this? Huh? Huh? How many people in the city, all right, I was going to leave it. I hate to leave and look over my shoulder and throw things, and all I do is see hundreds of little rabbit faces going. Let me ask you this. How many people in the city, how many ordinary people, just because they can't live by a commandment, feel insulted by their inability to do so? Contrary, they'll stand right up and say, well, let me say a word. Let me tell you, nah, I can't do it. I can't even do it as good as the guy that just said he can't do it at all. I can't even do it that good. They're not insulted. You got to actually be somebody to be able to insult yourself. That is enough. Let's go on to something else absolutely unrelated, and something that you absolutely could not use as any sort of alum or irritant to rub on your own intelligence. An angry man cannot recognize satire. Those of you who are writing instruments and their ability to exercise them, why don't you write that down? And I'll tell you something about it. A long, long time ago in a far, far away place, do you recall I spoke one night, and in the midst of it, I pointed out to you, and I told you it was serious. As much as I got some of you to chuckle along and some of you to smile and go, God, what an idea. And I told you it was serious. That you would be well served if you took this attitude, that every time you got mad at humans, let me make it easy for you to start with, at another person, a stranger, just some dumbass getting in your way at the grocery store, the way somebody's driving, that if you took this attitude, now since all of you to varying degrees have a nervous system, have an intelligence that's told you along the way that maybe you'll never be rich and famous, But there's something a little out of the ordinary about you. You're not just a run-of-the-mill old peckerhead. You're not just Mr. and Ms. Dumb John Smith, USA, anywhere, planet Earth. For one thing, you wouldn't have got involved with this, as weird as it may be. You simply known it. You've known it all your life, most of you, that I'm a little something special. I don't know where I'll actually be famous and rich. But I am not run-of-the-mill, right? All right, so what if that's true? What if life does have these people here and there? They're not necessarily rich and famous. You can always say, at least in this lifetime. At least this time around. But what if life does have these people, such as you believe that you are, that there's something, I got some kind of mission, there's some kind of itch in me that's not run-of-the-mill. What if that's true? It could be. Of course it is, I know, but I'm just playing along. It could be, all right? What I told you, if you remember, was every time that you get mad, that somebody, a stranger driving by in their car, that you get mad about the dumbness, the inaneness of other people, is what if it was this? That since you are one of the ones that life sort of has taken notice that, what if all of this is continually a test to see how you're doing, and every time you go, God damn, look where you're going. This is you. This always felt like, well, I'm something special. I mean, there's obviously, I've thought things, I've been interested in things that nobody around me, my mother, my father, my rabbi, my priest, I couldn't find anybody until this, but at any rate, I have all my life been sort of walking my own private path in here. God damn, look where you're going, you motherfucker. The kind of books I started reading when I was younger, I have never met anybody. I mean, and the way I have concerns, like, watch it, you bastard! God damn. But I have the kind of concerns of worrying about humanity and where things are going. Do you hear me? You heard me that night. Now, I didn't just make that up just to get a laugh or to make somebody go, wow, what a weird idea. I'll tell you again before I go any further with tonight's approach to it. Consider that. What if you are one of the possible ones, that you do belong here, that life does have these little pieces of its nervous system the same way that you have these little weird things that made you think that you may be that little one of the little weird things in life's own intelligence. But it checks itself out. You check some of this out. You just didn't know how to call it that. Well, anyway, life is complicated and complex enough that it can send down shit like this. It's going on out there, people hitting each other, and life, it runs by its own complex schedule and script that you can't perceive to begin with. And so there are people driving, everybody is sitting in cars. The expressway's full. It just changes. You can't hear it. It's like a choir. One group over here singing, watch it, you motherfucker, and that guy goes by, and then he goes, yeah, my way, you bastard. No, it's just going on. It's not out of the ordinary, so why not that life pays some attention to how you react to this? That is a continual test. Right? I want to show you, or try and point for some of you, to complex it up a little bit, to take it to another level. That's why I started this paragraph. Is an angry man cannot recognize satire. A potential joke, a possible put-on, will absolutely escape somebody mad. Now, I said angry and mad, but let me even slice that thinner. Let me go into one of my Baptist bits, fundamentalist bits. One night I was sitting in a bar, a restaurant. But I had a bar over there at the side. I was just having coffee, and they had this TV on. And it was professional wrestling, science fiction for the body. Well, I figured turnabout was fair play, if you remember. Years ago, one time, I defined science fiction as professional wrestling of the mind. It just struck me. As I was sitting there, remunerating, pondering, waiting for someone, my quiet solitude, a couple of guys were sitting there at the bar watching professional wrestling. And so I started listening to them and watching some of what was going on. And I assume that enough of you watch wrestling that not only the drama between the wrestlers, that now, to help make it a little more complex, since it's bigger and bigger business, anyway, they now have managers. It seems like everybody's got managers, and so you got the scenes are a little more complex than they used to be. From just two guys, and not all everybody just would be attracted to being professional anyway. Wrestler is literate enough to verbalize and go by enough to keep the camera interested in them shouting at the other person how I'm going to get you. And so he brought in managers. So instead of just two wrestlers, doing this to each other and verbally, not the fights, but the promos for the fights, which is the whole point of them being on TV, is now you have, not only there's two, but each of them, let's say, has a manager, and so you got four people. So at any rate, one of them, they were saying, and here comes so-and-so, and they were about to interview him, and saying his notorious, his infamous manager, whatever his name was, Daddy Cool. And he said, and he had his own logo, his own slogan was Daddy Cool, professional wrestling's sharpest dressed man. It was something like that. And so this is going on, I'm still sipping on my coffee, and then one of the guys at the bar really goes into, well, these wrestlers are bad enough, but this guy damn Daddy Cool, can you believe him coming out, and he's always pressing around talking about, I'm the sharpest dressed man in show business. He said, look at that guy. He said, I'm bad enough. That's kind of people sitting here at a bar. But look at him and call himself the best dressed wrestler, a manager in professional wrestling. So I glanced up, and sure enough, the guy, it wasn't an obvious put on, but the guy was dressed like he'd come out of, maybe his wardrobe comes from Kmart. It was just an ill-fitting, off-the-rack suit, and he had a little hat on. The shirt, the collar was too big, He looked like, it barely met middle-class expectations for being well-dressed. It wasn't an obvious put on, but the guy was dressed like he'd come out of, maybe his wardrobe comes from Kmart. It was just an ill-fitting, off-the-rack suit, and he had a little hat on. The shirt, the collar was too big, He looked like, it barely met middle-class expectations for being well-dressed. But the guy was doing his part. He was talking about, he was giving all the numbers and trying to shoot his cuffs and talking about, yes, me, I'm Daddy Cool, the manager of so-and-so, but me, remember, the sharpest dressed manager in professional wrestling. And the guys at the bars are really getting hot. I thought, can you believe that kind of, boy, I'd like to punch that son of a bitch in the nose. He comes up, I got better suits than that. Look at him. Do you follow me? Now, I'm not even saying because I'm making all this up. It probably happened, but I thought I made it up. I'm not saying that somebody wouldn't take a great genius, but I'm not even saying that somebody is sitting down with that particular show and decided, hey, let's come up with a manager, and what do you think he would do? And they've tried all kinds of things, having a whole bunch of fey guys, having guys that are too fat, having guys that are loudmouths, having, they try everything. So did somebody say, well, hey, let's get this guy, and he'll act like he's real vain, and he will even, we'll call him the sharpest dressed manager in professional wrestling, but we'll tell him to just go to Kmart and just get something that sort of fits and wear it, but keep going through all these, like you're somebody. And you're dressed as bad as these, clowns that come out here and pay their money. I'm not even saying that they did that, but it's not important whether they did or not. Here is the point. That could have happened. Will you hear me? That's nothing strange. They think, well, what can we do? What else will stir the crowd up? What's another good gimmick we hadn't used? Well, let's get the guy and call him the sharpest dressed man in professional wrestling. And he's not. But he really goes through the things about, hey, ain't I something? And he ain't something. He's just nothing. That'll get a bunch of them, right? But, all right, let's assume that happened. Let's assume that was the intention of it. Even if that was not the intention that was willfully conceived by an individual somewhere, you do understand that life, through its myriad of ways that it grows and dances around, that it did happen. Even if nobody planned it, here is this guy, because I did look up, and he's dressed just like I'm saying he was. And he did claim to be the sharpest dressed guy in professional wrestling. And there he was playing the part, and he was not. I mean, he wasn't dressed as good as somebody that works in Kmart. All right? But the guy sitting there, if that was the intention, let's stir up the crowd. Do you understand that all you got to do is get upset at all? I said angry, I said mad, but I wanted you to see now that it wasn't even personally. The example I used is two guys sitting there, and it's not something happened individually to them alive, in person. They're watching a TV thing. It could have been taped a year ago. They're sitting there looking at this cathode ray tube, electrons are going up there, and them getting mad, and it could have been a satire. But if you get mad at all, if you get upset at all, if you are a critic at all, you and nobody will ever recognize satire. Think about it. If you don't like the one I started out with months ago of life giving you a test, and if you don't like it, you should wonder why you didn't like it, because it scared you. But if you do not like that one, if you can't dance with that one all the time, how about this? That maybe life is not so serious that it's continually testing you to see if it really wants to go ahead and tell you all the stuff it hadn't told me. Or at least tell you all the stuff that you figure I know, and just tell it to you, and you don't have to put up with me just letting it out a little bit at a time. But what if life is not necessarily that serious, at least all the time? What if it's continually running little put-ons on you? Then what happens? Like this car swerved by while you're sitting there out this other lane and almost hit you. You and your Beamer, you and your Porsche. That son of a bitch almost hit me. What if life sent it and the guy's a professional stunt driver? He didn't almost hit you. He looked back, he measured where you were, and he made sure the lane was clear, and he knows how to throw a thing into a skid and do it, and it just looked like it. And life had already told him, go do that to the guy, let's see what he does. And so the guy has to kind of turn his head because he knew that he could come within an inch of your car and go, ah! And knowing if you're ordinary that you're probably going to get scared to death and then mad. And so he does it. But it's a put-on. And what happens? You go, you goddamn bastard. Whether you said that or not. An angry man cannot even recognize, forget appreciate, you can't even recognize satire. All you got to do is be mad. Somebody try to play a practical joke on you. All you got to do is get mad about it, and it's not a joke. Everybody knows that. They used to have that show, Candid Camera. Think about, God knows, I'd guess that they had to throw out 100 feet, 50 feet for every foot of film they used. Are the kind of people that could find out that, hey, that mailbox is not actually talking to me, it's a joke. Somebody, for every person that went, and suddenly the person says, have you ever heard of Candid Camera? And they go, ah. And on TV, for everyone that did that, I suggest you there had to be 5 or 10 that went, God damn, what the hell is this? Immediately got mad, but even got madder when they said, wait a minute, don't keep kicking that. It's Candid Camera, it's a joke. A joke? Where the hell are you? I'll show you a joke. What if? The same thing as when I did before, asking you to consider what is a test. I'm asking you again directly. I'm serious. I'm serious this could be. I wouldn't bring it up. But the things that make you mad, what if they're a joke? What if it is a satire? Now, I'm not talking about something that hurts you. If a car does hit you, we're not talking about a satire anymore in a sense. All that, of course, not true, but I'm trying to give you somewhere to stand to get going with this. The things that do not actually hurt you, but the things that you believe could have hurt you, the things that you fear are going to happen. You know sooner, your little savings, you take it out of a CD and you decide, well, I'll put it over here in some little, a new thing, a a variable interest bouncing water CD over at this bank in Omaha, whatever it is. And you no sooner take it out, you call them. They say, no problem, we're back, we've got it, federal insurance, we've been in business for 200 years, blah, blah, blah. And so you got your money out of your bank here and you wire it to them, and the next day you pick up the paper, and it says, federal government investigating and may stop all of this bouncing, bubbling water CD scam. You go, all my money! What is a joke? You understand? I'm not saying that you lose your money, but it's the kind of fears. The guy nearly hit me. I could have lost my money. What if all of that is a satire? There are things that can hurt, is why I'm trying to give you some place to start, but how about the rest of them? Just the ones that you think could have hurt me. The ones that you want to curse somebody about. God damn, don't you know how close you came to hurting me, to costing me money? Don't you know how close you came to insulting me? What if it is a satire? Then listen to me. I don't care how smart you are, you can't get away from this in the city. You can't get away from this with the ordinary operations of the human nervous system up here. If you are angry, I don't care how smart you are, I'm telling you, you cannot see satire. I could be sitting there with you, and many of you, you're as intelligent as people I've ever met in the city. A handful of you guys and girls. But I could be sitting somewhere with you, and something happened, a talking mailbox, somebody almost hit you, and if you went, let's say in my mystical way I knew that you got the tight ass about this. Whether you said anything or not, and what if I said, by the way, Life had told me it was going to pull this afternoon, is why I was sitting over here with you. It was a joke. If I said that, let's assume that you would take me very seriously. If you went, Jesus, he's serious. Right that second, you would not. You'd be in the same level as the person with the talking mailbox, the kind of film footage they got to throw away. If I said, that was a satire, you still would not see it as a satire. As best you could at ordinary level, you might, let's say, take my word, that if I said that, there's some validity somewhere. But right then, you do not see any fucking humor. You do not see it as a satire. All you got to do is get the nervous system to accept that energy as it seems to be presented to you at the level of your own intelligence, that I have been insulted, I have been nearly abused, I have nearly been hit. That's no satire. If I shouldn't say it is, it is. Trust me, I knew this was coming. I wrote it down here in a sealed envelope, and I told you this was going to happen. You say, well, all right, but it's still, what you'd be saying is, it still ain't funny. That's no satire. Find some other way. Tell life to do something else, but don't pull that on me. Oh. Oh, you might remember that. If it's not tests going on of life, perhaps having some particular interest in you, that you are out of the ordinary, then the times it's not giving you a test, consider the possibility the other times it's just fooling around. But fooling around is serious enough if it finds out that you can't even take a joke. If it finds out it's looking for somebody to introduce to new intelligence, a different level, and it finds out that just back at the old level, that you're so dumb, because it takes somebody extremely dumb. We're talking about the city level, those kind of relative levels of the complexity of intelligence. It takes somebody fairly intelligent back in the city to fully recognize and to fully appreciate satire. Now you know that. You take somebody on the lower end of the mechanical, intellectual scale back in the city, you don't find satire. That's the ones that people a little more complex in the city, they're the ones that laugh at those that take wrestling serious, and they say, don't you fuckers understand that that ain't serious? Now people go, get away from me. No, you just don't appreciate good fun. They don't see any humor in it. You do not find satire, you don't find bricklayers, carpenters, people in the sewer making satirical comments to one another. There's very little parody going on in the verbal byplay of people working on garbage trucks. At that level, I don't have time to go into it, but some of you should be able to see. It's just the way things in the city, it's neither here nor there, but I simply want you to see that even at the city level, where everything is, relatively speaking, the same to us, to a new level of intelligence, it's all the same, but even within them there are levels of complexity and simplicity. But it takes somebody just at the ordinary level, relatively speaking, more complex, to even appreciate, to even recognize, to understand satire. There are people in the city that are literate. You probably, well, I know you do. Some of you got relatives. People are quite literate, maybe well off in life. Well, one way to tell, if you want a basic way, is there are people that apparently just have no sense of humor to start with. And so if you start there, you don't even have to ask yourself much further. You should be able to hear what I was going to say. If they don't really seem to have a sense of humor, then I guarantee you, satire, every time they see the word, they have to go look it up. And they have to ask somebody, well, why would somebody say something if they didn't mean it? I mean, what's the point of saying something and it, what is that? So now think, you consider yourself to be exceptional. What if you're not even exceptional at the city level? That is, you can't recognize satire when it almost runs over you. No, because you go, God damn, watch it! What the shit is this? It was a joke, son. It was a joke. Well, I don't see anything funny about it. I know you don't. You got mad. You got upset. Well, I had good right to. Sure did. Nobody can stop you. It's a free world. Well, was it really a joke? Yeah, but it's over now. You can't back up and unjoke yourself. How about the good old stories? Now I'll drop this one. That almost everybody on this planet is wired up to in some way be subject to the ideas that there's a day of judgment sometime, and then a reward, a punishment. But the day of judgment, how about this? There you are. God damn, I guess we'll end up in line again, won't we? Got to get in line to die, but now imagine all the people dying all the time. Then you end up at the day of judgment. You're back in line again. So at any rate, you get there, and there's the big guy, or the assistant big guy. Some angel, some mythological minion. But anyway, you're there to be judged. Instead of these kind of ideas in the Judeo-Christian religion, or even Islam, about that you're going to be weighed, and there's these columns about all the good stuff you did and all the bad stuff, and in some way somebody got to run a calculator and decide, well, okay, you go here and you go there. Instead of that, instead of the immoral acts, the illegal acts, instead of all that, what if it's this? What if it's this? They look down and they see the number of satires, the put-ons, the jokes to which you were exposed, that you were at least a passive part, and how many of them you actually recognize? None? None? What if that's it? 5? And you're how old? I'm 63. And in 63 years you recognize 5 satires. Is that what you're telling me? Did you recognize that 5 times life kind of, as the British would say, had at you? And you thought you recognized it 5 times? Yeah. I guess the guys might have to go back and say, we may have to change the standard here. The high today that I've had thus far was 5. The average has been, up until now, was 0. What is that is going to be the kind of standard? Yeah, but then you go off by yourself and prop your feet up at 2 in the morning and drink coffee, read philosophy books, smoke and stare out the window and think, what an exceptional dude or dudette I am. The kind of insights I have. In fact, I bet some of the times I can follow what that guy says probably as good or better than most of the people in there. Boy, those Byzantine, rococo turns of my mind. What's that goddamn noise? Turn down those record players upstairs. Turn the radio down. That's what I hate about living in an apartment with people. Turn it down, damn it. What if it's life up there again about, well, all right, there he is or she is having those great thoughts. He or she may have some promise. Well, let's try this. It's Zeus and some of his pals up there, Jehovah or God or Allah. And he says, turn the stereo up. Let's see what he does. They turn it up, and suddenly from down there, and they realize that you're there having great thoughts, and suddenly you holler, "Turn it down!" And they think, geez, man can't take a joke. Of course, then I could take you back to somewhere else where I started. Maybe you don't need to be able to take a joke. Maybe that's not what you need. Maybe you don't need this. What if I could give you, I mentioned sex and money and fame in the city. What if I could give you this? What if I could give you your way? Then would you need this? And by your way, I don't mean that you're suddenly king of the planet Earth, but how about this? I could just arrange, all right, from now on, you're going to live another 20 or 30 years, whatever it is in your case. All right, from now on, nobody's going to bug you. I got an end with life. I know how to arrange these things. It's not all that, I start to say it's not all that complicated. It ain't complicated, period. But what if I could? Instead of fame and fortune, it's just going to be that nobody's going to ram your car, nobody's going to turn up the stereo when you're trying to think or you're asleep, nobody's going to insult you. What if that's it? Then would you need this? In other words, you don't have to learn to take a joke. It's not necessary that you recognize satire because you won't be subject to it anymore. Would you settle for that? Would that mean that this be the final time that I see your lovely face? Well, who needs anything else? If life didn't bug me, I wouldn't put up with it. I wouldn't be here. I mean, this is interesting, but geez, if life didn't bug me, period, just here and there, I don't know. I don't know where I'd come back, now that you put it that way. An angry man cannot recognize satire. If it walks right up, dressed up like a majorette, and bit you on a private part of your body, if you're angry, and it's got satire written on it, you wouldn't recognize it. At least you can't say, now look at the many, many times and the many, many ways I've wished you Merry Christmas. No. I told you to be of good cheer. Told you to cheer up. Told you that only captive people take things seriously. Captive people are ugly. And from a certain angle, I let Kyrut finish the other night, but I really wanted to jump up with a bass drum or a tuba and put a coda on that to try to get your attention, so I'll just go ahead and repeat it. From a certain angle, I got to tell you, everybody, and I said everybody, I'm not leaving anybody out. Everybody from a certain angle looks funny. Any of you who doubt that, does anybody doubt that? Who do you think is the greatest? Who just strikes you that you've seen? Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton, Laurence Olivier, Ronald Reagan. Just get a little film. Just get a script, just a minute of somebody in animation, one of those people talking. If we could dig up Jesus, Buddha, and you had just a minute's worth of film, where you can just punch and just show a frame at a time. In other words, turn the film, the movie film, into a series of stills. By the time you run through that minute, before that minute's out, there's going to be a photo. In other words, it'll look like a still of one place where the guy will be, that if you looked at it, and that's all you had, that there is Buddha, there's Einstein, there is you, there is me, that one thing you look at and you go, and so don't tell me, well, they just caught him at the wrong, he was between expressions, or don't try and weasel out, I'm telling you what I intended to tell you. Or that Kyrut, I'm telling you what I intended to tell you is from a certain angle, everybody looks funny. If you can't recognize that, you don't recognize satire anyway. If you can't look in the mirror and see satire, possibly written. It may be in invisible ink, it may be that life at least is up to the level of a Cub Scout, that it has written, maybe, in lemon juice, satire across your head, and you just hadn't put the right amount of heat here in your intelligence to make it show up, and it goes satire, and you keep looking at yourself and you won't take you seriously, or you keep wanting to do something about you, or you keep thinking, why am I not recognized for what I actually am? And what you actually am is a goddamn parody. You're a satire. But we all somewhere, now one side of the partnership, how about this? What is the partnership? There's another name for it. Especially the more serious you are, the partnerships, one of the names is Gilbert and Sullivan. Yes, I'm Mr. or Ms. Serious USA anywhere planet Earth. Really? Just remember, if you're angry, if you're upset, and if you carried along this far, how about this? If you're routinely human, you wouldn't recognize satire if it came up and bit you on the ass. And of course, you're looking in the wrong place. I just suggested go in and look in the mirror, go in the bathroom, and look around. Of course, maybe I mean look in the mirror and there'll be some kind of mystical trick that if you look in the mirror, then behind you somewhere, you'll get this great spooky message. Maybe that's what I mean. Maybe not. Look in the mirror and see if you recognize satire. If you can't spot a parody, if you can't see a put-on when you see it, remember this. You're mad. Now let me change from mad equals angry to you're mad. You're nuts. You're city-fried, and you probably can't be undone. I have decided that that is enough for a Monday. Plus our tape ran out.